Hello, and welcome to Psychology of the Strange. So, what is time? You can sit there and count the seconds if you like. That would be boring. Or you can just look around and see that things change. And movement is a type of change, whether it's an image on TV, your cat playing with a toy, or a tree outside where the leaves and branches are constantly shifting. That's how you know that time is passing, because things change their position. They can also change their color, their shape. In music, a note stops and another begins. That's another type of change. In fact, time is change. They're exactly the same thing. Now think about what happens as you watch a movie. You see characters and things in that movie moving, just like in real life. But you already know that this movie is in fact nothing more than a bunch of still pictures. The movement that makes that movie what it is an illusion. It's your brain, of course, that merges all these images together to give you an impression of movement. What if this was also true of your entire life? And about your cat or that tree outside? What if your whole life is just like that movie? There are no reasons to believe that the reality outside of you is moving or changing in any way, meaning that time does not pass. I covered this in another video up here. It's your brain that creates the story of your life, just like it creates a movie out of still images. Time does not exist. There's a clock in your brain that gives you a sense that time passes. This clock actually resides in many different places in the brain, and if they did not exist or did not function properly, you'd have no way of knowing how long it's been since you started this video, no way of distinguishing past from future, and no way to locate yourself in time. And of course, without this concept of time, you'd be left extremely confused. In fact, there's a condition known as dyschronometria, also known as time blindness, which is of course much easier to pronounce, in which the person can never tell how much time has gone by. This is kind of like color blindness, where the person cannot see certain colors because the part of the visual system that is responsible for that is not working. When you and I see the color red, for example, there's no such color in the world, or for that fact, in the entire universe. What does exist is light that bounces off an object and reaches your eyes at a particular wavelength. That light is not colored at all. It's your brain that gives you the sense of redness based on that wavelength or energy. So in a way, you could say that individuals who lack something that we all perceive are actually closer to reality because their brain is no longer creating a reality that is not actually out there. In time blindness, what they lack is an internal timer, and an individual will report that only a few seconds or minutes will have passed when in fact a whole hour has gone by. What does this tell us? That a mechanism in the brain is required to have an experience of time. Let me rephrase this. We are entirely dependent on our brain to have a sense that time passes. And I would argue that time perception is like color perception. We perceive something that does not exist. Now, assuming that all areas of the brain involved in processing time function properly for you, then if time is real and it does pass at a particular rate, your perception of time should be the same hour after hour and day after day. But it's not. Even in normal individuals, your perception of time in fact depends on a lot of different conditions. You probably already noticed that time seems to pass much faster when you're having fun. And you may believe that is just your imagination. After all, how could being bored or happy be affecting time itself? But this effect is in fact real. It is not your imagination. It has been demonstrated in the lab that if you're sad or depressed, for example, you judge a signal as lasting longer than if you're not depressed. The conclusion is that the rate at which time passes for you is not just controlled by an internal clock in the brain, but that clock is also affected by emotions. So when your emotions fluctuate during the day, remember this. Be sad, and that clock will actually tick slowly, and that day will be long. Here's a list of several factors that determine how fast or how slow time passes for you. Your heartbeat. Several experiments found a link between the rate of your heartbeat and your perception of time. In short, the longer the time between heartbeats, the slower you perceive time to pass. Weird? Yeah. Your age. You may remember that when you were just a few years old, a day seemed like eternity. As you age, days start to flash past, and by the time you're old, the sun may as well set as soon as it rises. This, again, is probably no illusion, because what we know of brain processing provides an explanation. It has been suggested by a Duke University researcher that as you age, the brain processes information much more slowly, which would result in a perception of time as speeding up. If you think of the brain as capturing the outside world frame by frame, when you're younger and your brain is fast, it's like increasing the speed on the camera. What happens when you do this? As you process more of these frames over the course of the given day, that day will run in slow motion and be very long. But as you age and your brain slows down, the opposite happens. So you skip many of these frames now. It's like fast forwarding through a movie so that you get to the end of the day faster and the day will be short. Ever wondered why younger people drive so fast and older individuals so much slower? If traffic seemed to go in slow motion, the way it does for younger people, you have to press on the gas. But if that same traffic seemed to go in fast forward, as for older people, you have to press on the brake. Makes sense. Now think of what this means, because things get really strange now. Even if we assume that time does pass, and I'm arguing that it doesn't, but let's just say that it does. Even if it does, the following must be true. If we do not all process time at the same rate, we can never be at the same location in time. I know this sounds strange, but everyone is either going faster or slower than the others, sort of like in a race, where some lag behind and others get to the finish line faster. Does this mean that when you're having a conversation with someone, that person already had that conversation with you? Or maybe have not had it yet? Could we ever say that we are all ever truly there at the same time? That's the question I've had for a long time. And it still bugs me. Different animals. Researchers have also found that different species of animals perceive time differently. For example, animals that are small and have fast metabolisms perceive time in slow motion. Why is it that it's so difficult to swat a fly? As far as it's concerned, you're just an awkward giant moving ridiculously slow. They just laugh at you. They have no real reason to fear you. Brain chemistry. Your brain releases chemicals that are related to your mood, memory, behavior, perception. In other words, they're related to your whole reality. There's one in particular that has been shown to affect your perception of time. This chemical is called dopamine. The more dopamine you have, the faster time passes for you. Dopamine is released when you're excited about something. Remember, time flies when you're having fun. This may be why music, and music alone, and also the type of music you're listening to, can affect your perception of time. Now let's do something for fun. I'm trying to demonstrate something here. Try the following experiment. You're going to touch something with your finger and your big toe at exactly the same time. You ready? Finger, big toe, same time. Did you feel your finger and big toe touching something at the same time? I know, right? Why wouldn't you? That's exactly what I asked you to do. But consider this. The nerve fibers leaving your toe are much longer than those leaving your finger, so that it takes longer for the signals from your toe to reach your brain. So how could you feel your toe and finger as touching something at the same time if your brain didn't receive the information from both at the same time? Clearly, you should have felt your finger first and your big toe second. But the reason you felt them at the same time is this. Your brain actually changes when you consciously feel the toe and the finger in order that you feel them at the same time. Your brain fools you to perceive what you expect to happen, not what actually happens. Now trust me, the brain does this kind of stuff all the time. Do not trust your brain. Give me a favor before I finish this conversation with you. If you enjoy this type of content, like this video and subscribe. I just started this channel and we'll really appreciate your support. There's a strong impression that time passes and that it does so on its own. We feel the passage of time much like we feel the wind passing around us, as if we're just standing there, a passive witness to it. But everything points to that as being an illusion. There's a growing consensus that the sense that time passes is just a function of your brain. Remember that your entire reality is in fact determined by your brain. I have a video on that you must watch if you haven't seen it already. So why should time be any different? Now, our brain seems to stitch together snapshots of reality to give the appearance of movement or change, where that actual movement or change may not exist outside of you at all. Given what we know of the external world and in psychology, it seems as though what I'm about to say here may be a good analogy of what's actually going on. Part of this comes from long-dead philosophers, how physicists think about time and our world, and what we know about in psychology. Make of it what you will. You don't have to agree with it, and let me know in the comments. Think of your life as being like a movie. You're a character in this movie. Let's say you're the main character. Now imagine someone else watching. This person can stop the movie at any time and see that the movie is just a series of still frames. The movie itself is an illusion. Nothing really changes in it because it's just a series of frozen images. This is the way our reality seems to be. Everything is still and changing and exists all at once, whether it's in the past, present, or future. Now remember, you're a character in this movie. At any point in it, meaning any given frame, you're just a still image. When the watcher runs the movie, it looks as though things move, things change. That's the illusion of time. But the watcher can literally skip any point in the movie, and you, the character, will never know. Because your point in time at any given moment is defined by the memory you have about what came before you, the past, and the lack of information your brain has about what's in front of you, the future. There's no way for you to know that the movie is in fact not moving at all.